Hey, I had somebody ask me this morning. He asked me, said, "Who's your favorite person in the Bible?" And I looked at him. I said, "Seriously?" He said, "Aside from Jesus, who is your favorite person in the Bible?" I said, "Oh, okay, that's different." But even then, the answer is somewhat simple to me. I think the person that I most easily identify with is the Apostle Paul. And the reason for that is because, well, first, I think I can identify with everybody in the Bible at some point. That's why God put them in there, and that's why God inspired those to be written down and become scriptures, so we could really connect with them on many aspects of our lives and our existence. But Paul is the person that I most easily identify with because his role that he played most parallels the role that I believe we should be playing in this world as far as preaching the gospel. I don't believe anybody preached the gospel with such conviction, with such uncompromising attitude as Paul. In fact, he even knuckled up against some of the apostles too, notably Peter on a couple of occasions when they were compromising, especially in a letter from James that came through, wanting to kind of impose some kind of religious compromises for people to follow Jesus and accept the faith. Um, he really went into the lion's den, not literally, but I mean, again, in Rome, into towns where people just absolutely just gave him the cold shoulder, stoned him, threw him in prison, and even then, uncompromisingly stayed true to his course. That's astonishing, especially when you consider his background. He, of course, as you know, originally was Saul Paulus of Tarsus. He made his career following the law and the doctrines and was dedicated to hunt down and persecute Christians. And then, of course, on the road to Damascus, God came to him in that vision of light. Jesus revealed himself as Lord. And at that point, again, once he received the baptism of the Holy Spirit after he was blinded on the road, and he received the baptism of the Holy Spirit and the scales fell away from his eyes. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a couple of minutes. He went out and preached the gospel unashamedly, uncompromisingly, and nothing was going to stop him. Now, first, I want to say, can you imagine if the Apostle Paul was here today and we knew his history going into this sudden change of heart, and he decided all of a sudden to start preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ? Can you imagine in this age of social media what they would have done to him? They would have ripped him to shreds. He would not have gotten to first base, especially in this country, which has so many convenience substitutes to God. And so I think that's a rather amusing thought. I thought about that today. I'm like, oh man, the opposition he would have gotten here would have been bad, but it would have been in really astonishing excesses. But this is a role that I can really identify with. We need to really be that uncompromising in our preaching, in our words that we tell to people, in our actions that we show to people. And again, we have to walk in knowledge. Paul clearly was a man who did not preach based on his beliefs. He preached on what he knew. He had experiences happen to him, and it happened to him here in the Spirit. Jesus revealed it to him here. If it happened to him physically, everybody would have seen Jesus on the road to Damascus. They didn't see him. They just felt the mighty rush wind. They heard a voice, but they couldn't quite make it out. Paul did. And then when he received the baptism of the Holy Spirit, he went on his way. Now, this blindness that they were talking about in the Bible, I want to state here, everybody has convinced themselves that it was a physical blindness, that the light physically blinded him. I'm not going to argue with you if that's what you feel, because I think that that I heard one pastor say that, well, the light of God is so bright, if you look at it with unspiritual eyes, it can blind you. I thought that's definitely a very good analogy and a very good way of presenting it. I believe personally It was a spiritual blindness. Let me explain. Here's a man who dedicated his life to hunting and persecuting Christians. This was his lifeblood. He was going for this. He took his knowledge for what he read and what he believed, he was driving forward. And then out of the blue, his total theory was completely turned upside down. The feelings of guilt and confusion and shock just completely, I think, gridlocked him to the point where he literally couldn't see. The vision, I think they're talking about, is that he was completely stopped. He couldn't move, and he needed help to move into the next town. When Ananias baptized him in the Holy Spirit and they say the scales fell away from his eyes, I've seen interpretations in various films that he literally was blind, and all of a sudden, I can see. I think that the sight that he could see was now the understanding of the gospel of Jesus Christ, who Jesus is, and what Paul's purpose is. Now he realized that Jesus is Lord, and he was going to uncompromisingly do the instructions for what was revealed to him directly into his heart. We need to walk with that conviction. We need to walk with that knowledge. And unfortunately, we're using the things of this world, the circumstances in this world. We're looking for God to manifest himself through the miracles he can provide to get us through this life, when we should be focusing inside the Spirit for what he can tell us and reveal us about ourselves and what we're to do. What we're to do is a pleasure and an honor to follow God. It's a pleasure to do that. I don't even have to think. In fact, when I never really asked God why for anything. I never asked God to give me anything because staying close to him, he always puts me on toward the next step. So this to me is the vision. Again, I know everybody goes on a different path. I'm not saying that the way I went is the way you should go. I think everybody has a unique path. We're all unique children in God's eyes, but the understanding that we have of God has got to be uniform. It's got to be. We have got to learn and know the heart of God. Paul did, and he knew it so well that he refused to buckle. Not even an inch. Not even an inch. The one instance when they talk about Paul's thorn in the flesh, and I go through another video here on, if you want to go ahead and check it out at some point, I'll put the link below if you can't see it. I believe was a lot of frustration that he had gone through when he was talking, especially to Christians who he believed should have followed that, and then kind of backed away. I know I've exhibited that at some point because I've had people who were trying to, for a long time, get me to give my heart to Jesus Christ. I wouldn't do it because of my stubbornness. And then finally it happened, and then I gained the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and I went deeper in knowledge, and then their attitude turned to one of jealousy. Their attitude became, who do you think you are? You just told me to become a part of the family, and now I am. He loves me and he loves you. Why are you upset when someone else is getting blessed? You ought to say, right on. Team Jesus, rah, 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 let's go. Why are you going after somebody who's more blessed than you? Or just as blessed as you, but just haven't realized what you have? It's just, anyway, not diverting from the subject here. I know that's a whole different post. But anyway, just to conclude, the Apostle Paul is the role model I believe that we should follow. I know Hollywood has put out several versions of his life, most notably Paul, the Apostle of Christ, where Jim Caviezel played Luke. It was a very good film. I need to watch it again. I watched it once late at night, and it was a long day, and I didn't give it my full attention. I need to watch it again. My favorite version of the story of Paul came out on TV years ago, where Anthony Hopkins played the Apostle Paul. The the series is called Peter and Paul. It's out on DVD. You can order it. And Robert Foxworth, interesting casting choice, plays Peter. If you haven't seen it, you need to give it a check. It's really powerful. Hopkins' portrayal of Paul is just fireballs. It is amazing. He did an incredible job. This was like early in his career, so a very young Hopkins. But check that out. Anyway, that's are my thoughts. Hope you all have a great night. Have a great day. God bless you, and we'll talk to you again.